Hey everybody, welcome back to my shop. And today we're going to turn this weird, funky chokecherry bowl thingy. But please remember, this is not an instructional video and it is meant for entertainment purposes only. Your safety is your responsibility. Well, let's get started. So we're starting this project out with a really misshapen piece of wood. It's got multiple crotches in it, and it's from a really diseased chokecherry that should have some really nice grain inside. So I'm hoping we can capture it. But right now it looks like it almost already has a flat bottom, like it wants to sit like that. So I figured maybe we'll try to make some sort of a decorative platter. So let's figure out how to get it between centers and we can get to turning. So what I did is I took the piece over to the bandsaw and made a series of slightly dangerous cuts, and I'm just chiseling those pieces out so we can get a good flat spot to mount our spur drive. So what I did is I mounted it between centers to try to see where the balance point would be close. And the impression that I got from the live center, I'm just going to use a spade bit to drill out so that that live center will have some solid wood to bite into. Then we'll be ready to go. So we're all ready to start turning. This thing's been sitting for at least a couple of years, so it's pretty darn dry and it's really hard. So it might be slow going. And we're starting at about 400 RPM because we're way out of bounds. With very intermittent cuts and low RPM, this piece was challenging to bring into balance. At one point I even brought out the handsaw to lop off a good chunk from the other side, and this got us up to about 600 RPM. So I can see something starting to emerge here, but I'm not totally sure if I'm actually going to be able to get a tenon down here. I might have to use a glue block and put it between centers or something, but I'll keep turning and we'll figure that out as we go. I like to include as much turning footage as I possibly can in these videos, so I sped it up quite a bit for time's sake. There's just a lot of slow, steady, small cuts, again because the piece is so oblong, dry, and the RPMs aren't that high. Hey, nice rhyme. But this also makes it quite tricky for shear scraping, and you really got to watch your hands. So I've been shear scraping the living daylights out of this thing, trying to get rid of some tool marks and avoid some sanding, but it's really starting to show the neat figure that's coming out in the grain here. We got some rays coming out of some little sections, and we got this black streaking from the black knot disease it had. And but I'm not sure what this is actually going to be yet, whether it's going to be a sitting platter or a wall art, or maybe I'll have to make a stand for it. I'm not sure, but I think we'll flip it around and put it on something like a glue block and keep turning and see if something comes to mind along the way. One more key point is I'm going to make sure that this little foot area is very flat so that that glue block can seat properly. So I've turned a sacrificial glue block, and basically I just formed a very flat ring with an indent in the center here for that little nub on the bottom of the piece to work its way into. And I'm just going to attach it to this using this two-sided turner's tape. Made in Canada. So I've got it mounted up on that two-sided tape. I do not have any confidence at all with this staying on here, so I'm probably going to leave the tailstock up almost the entire time. And if I do take it away, I'll definitely check it first. But I'm just going to let this sit for 5 minutes under pressure just to get that glue to settle in. This piece has some grain going at weird angles and an old dead hard knot right here, so it's not going to be a real smooth turning. But we're going to just try to set an even wall thickness and take her slow and see what we get in the end. It's all experimental from here. So we're going to go about 600 RPM, see what we get. Getting a good clean cut on that long narrow limb is quite tricky, so I'm not working any further than 1 inch at a time. This will leave enough mass behind the area to help stop any vibration or chatter. Just to give you guys a feeling of how rough this wood is with all those old dead knots and spaces and everything, just listen, here we go. It's not that pretty. Maybe I should have turned this when it was still green. So I think I'm becoming a little stumped here because I don't know if I should just go straight wall thickness here or if I should leave this and make a little bowl or a box body or something. So I think I'm done turning for the day. I'm going to sleep on this and see if something comes to mind tomorrow. So it's the next day and I still don't know what to do with this thing. It's got too much curve to be some sort of wall art. Maybe I'll try to shape a little bowl down here and see how that turns out. Okay, I know what I'm going to do now. This is going to be a bowl, but it's not going to be opening on this side, it's going to open on the other side. And then I'm going to make a little stand for it to sit above the table since the bowl is too short to exceed these crazy wings. Okay, let's give it a shot. This stuff sure is fun to cut. Man, oh man, brutal stuff. Well, I guess we'll flip her around. Who knows where this project's going to head next. Actually, if we're going to be having this on a stand, I may as well clean up this tenon and drill the mortise for it right now while it's still on this glue block with that two-sided tape, which is holding very well, by the way. Holy mackerel. That's unbelievable. Why haven't I been using this stuff all along? I bought it in case I needed it. Just didn't realize it works this good. Oh! Look at that. That wouldn't have come off. Not easily. Okay, I'm going to hollow this out and I'm going to leave a little extra thickness in the bottom corners so that I can round them over a little bit up to that mortise so it doesn't really have a foot or a flat bottom. While hollowing a bowl, I always use two types of cuts. One pushing in from this way, And then when I have the center pyramid here, I just push in this way. See how fast that wastes away instead of trying to do the same cut? Some people like to do the same cut to get a little more practice towards the end of the bowl. I find it's kind of it cuts difficult, so. I'm just looking at a silhouette past these wings to try to get close to that wall thickness. Again, this stuff is just a pleasure to turn. Checking the wall thickness, we got quite a ways to go yet. You can kind of visually see it here and feel it over here. Okay, we're almost at our final wall thickness. I went and sharpened the gouge one more time, which I've done probably at least 8 times on this project, and I'm not kidding. This old dirty chokecherry is just mean wood. So let's get a couple cuts in here and see what it looks like. Just switching to the bottom feeder bowl gouge with a much steeper grind. Just going to clean up the bottom a little bit with a round nose scraper. Who knows what the heck this thing is, but this side's ready for sanding, so I'm going to do that off camera with 220, 320, and 400 grit sandpaper, and then we'll flip it around and work on the bottom. Before I move on to sanding, I'm just going to repair these little cracks. I'm not sure if the camera shows them or not, but I'm going to repair them with some crushed up charcoal and CA glue. I'm just going to reverse it between centers using a waste block and a foam pad to protect the inside surface. What I want to do is round over the bottom so it doesn't look like it has a foot or a flat bottom at all. Okay, now the bottom's complete, and I just gotta sand it. Sure was fun sanding the bottom of this. Yeah, let's make a stand. Just gonna turn the base out of some silver maple that hopefully has a little bit of fiddleback figure in it. Some chatoyance. I'm just starting with the spindle between centers, and I'm roughing it out, and then I'm marking out its overall length, the tenons, and some of the transitions. Okay, I have the general shape kind of figured out now. Now I'm just going to use my calipers to size the tenons accurately, and I'm going to make sure to undercut underneath, probably with the gouge, so that when the tenon goes into the mortise, the outside of that shoulder out here will sit flush on the base and the bottom of the bowl. I'm just sizing the tenons to 3/8 of an inch to match the Forstner bit we drilled our mortises with. Just going to sand the piece off camera with 220, 320, and 400 grit sandpaper, and then we'll part it off and move on to the base. Didn't even get to the skew chisel part. Now on to the base. I'm just roughing out the base with a bull gouge and then forming a tenon to hold it in the chuck. Okay, we got the base reversed in the chuck. First thing we're going to do is just flatten off this face and then we can drill a hole for our mortise. About 1400 RPM. Drill a hole. I'm going to keep the shape pretty simple for the base. I'm just going to leave this line and that'll give me a nice little flat spot for the shoulder of the bottom of the spindle to seat. So let's just give it a nice light little curve. Okay, I'm just going to sand this off camera and then we're going to flip it around and get rid of that tenon. Now it might seem kind of silly at first, but I turned a little jam chuck to fit the mortise of the base. But the reason I did that is to give us a second reference point when we reverse it between centers. We've already got the live center impression on the back side of the tenon, which is dead center, and so we may as well use this mortise, which is also dead center. Because if I just put it up against a piece of foam, it's hard to tell if that would actually run completely true. And so if we use both these reference points, we will have a spindle coming out of the top that's going to be perfectly plumb. Not bad. Need a little more tailstock pressure. And I'm undercutting this base a little bit so I know it'll always sit on the outer rim, the outer edge. Okay, I'm just going to sand and I'll knock that nub off. Now when this thing went slippy on us, it actually burnt a little ring here. But that's exactly why I made this inner shoulder of the jam chuck smaller than the foot of the base. No one will be the wiser. I just knocked that little nub off with a chisel and cleaned it up with sandpaper. I'm just going to sign my name, put the type of woods we used in the project, and put the year, and then we can go on to the gluing step. Just did a real quick test fit, and it looks good, so let's move on to the glue up. I'm just using some 5-minute epoxy to glue these parts together, and the reason is because epoxy is super strong, and it also has great gap filling ability. Now my mortise and tenon joints don't really have any play, but they're not super snug either, so I figured this would be the most safe and secure option. I think I'm going to use the same finishing procedure we used on last week's slab clock, link down in the description below. And that's just a few coats of this water-based polyurethane, and then we're going to top coat it with some beeswax. So we're just going to brush on a good amount to the surface, then wipe off all the excess. Let's see what this grain looks like. Got to make sure to get that bark good and coated. So we want to seal that bark right off. Oop. Stuff's getting away on me a little bit. That's okay though, as long as I don't drip too much. Some of it's bleeding through on the cloth, so I'm doing the chokecherry portion separate from the maple portion to try to avoid some of that bleed off. I think I even got some in the finish. Yeah, if it stains a little bit, no big deal. Nothing too critical. Another advantage to this finish is that it dries in half hour to an hour depending on the coat. So I'll be able to recoat this a couple times tonight and get on to waxing tomorrow morning. So there we go. Okay, so the finishing process is complete. We've got 4 coats of that water-based wipe-on poly, scuffing up after each coat, and then I just topped it off with some beeswax thin 50-50 with mineral spirits, which I just buffed on by hand. And that gave us this kind of matte sheen throughout the piece. But I've got a question for everybody. I was almost tempted to put a maple lid on here with a darker finial, but I couldn't tell if it would add or take away from the piece or if it was the right kind of combination. So if you have any suggestions for me on that issue, could you fire that off in the comments section down below? And if you have any idea of what woods or colors of woods would work best, I'd also like your opinion on that as well. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning into this week's video. Like usual, I'll throw some photos up at the end of the finished product. And if you liked the video, please click the like button and share it around. If you have any questions or suggestions for me, please fire those off in the comments section down below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'll have a new video out every Friday. So thank you very much and have yourself a great day.